Hi, me again. Today we're going to have a quick look at an AutoCAD routine. Again, this is one that I had written a while ago. I've just updated it, and I'll explain a couple of things that may go wrong with the routine. And the thing that prompted me to do this was a question I had from someone called Andrew, and he wanted to create this table over here. Now the table itself is made from individual blocks. Each row is a single block, and the blocks at the moment have 3 attributes. So the first attribute here needs to tie in with the number here and needs to be incremented by 0.1 for each subsequent block we add in. There are 2 other attributes on the block that you can see here. I haven't put them in exactly the same position, and I haven't named them exactly the same thing, but you'll see how they work. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to have a look at the code itself. So the code itself is in Notepad, and this is just a routine called Incremental Blocks, and it's actually, the file name is incblock_insertion. This is number 1, I've just updated it, and the thing you type in to run the function is incblock, INC block. Now actually in AutoCAD, once you've loaded this routine, all you need to do is type in inc and it will get that block. Now what this actually does is, the first thing it does is it asks you for the path to the block that you want to insert, and down here it then asks for a starting number, and then after that it asks you for an increment. You've then got the option for a prefix and suffix, neither of which we're going to use in this case, and a text height. Now if you don't specify text height, it sets it to 20. For these others it also puts in some defaults as well. Okay, the next thing here that this does, this command @dir, this is the attribute dialog box. It prevents the dialog box popping up to ask you which attributes you want to set when you're running it as a Lisp routine. When you want to automate it, you don't want dialog boxes popping up. So this sets the visibility to 0, and at the end of the code I've reset it to 1 so that it does actually work in the future. Here we're running it as a loop, so a while loop. And what we're now going to do is we're going to ask the user where we want to place this block. So this has already asked the user all the questions about the prefix, suffix, starting number, increment, etc. And this is now asking where you want to place it. So pick a reference point, in other words, click your mouse where you want it to go, depending upon the base point of the block. And I'll explain a little bit about that in a moment. Or press escape to end. Now escape will come out of the routine. Now this here you don't actually need for this particular routine, because we're using point 1, or PNT1 will be the XY coordinates whenever we click the mouse. What this does here is it breaks down the X and Y into the X and the Y. So if we wanted to do things with the separate individual coordinates, we could do. In this case we don't, so we're just going to ignore that. We're going to use point 1 itself later on. Down here we've got our counter, which we've set to whatever the starting number was. So if you see here, we've set the count to be whatever the start number is. And down here, what this is doing is that's turning that into a string. So real to string, that's what that means. It takes a real number, which is what we've got input as a count, and this is transferring it into the variable count1, which is a string variable. Now the reason for that is because we want to concatenate the string here, and you can't do that with real numbers, or it doesn't work properly with real numbers in this instance. So what we need to do is we've converted it into a string. Okay, here we're now creating a new variable called precount, and this is a concatenation of our prefix, our count, and our suffix. Now as I said, we're not using a prefix and a suffix in this example, but if we were, that would concatenate them all into a single variable, which is this one. Now this is the key to it here. This is where we're actually inserting our block. Now if you read this code, you'll see that this doesn't quite match what I've got here. Now this is specific to the block that I'm actually using in this instance, and it's probably going to be the default for most people's blocks. This is saying insert the block at name XY, which is our point 1, X scale, Y scale, rotation, and the attribute 1, whatever the variable we want. Now in this case we want that number here to be our variable 1. But here what I've done is I've said command insert, and I've said block path, which is the name, 0.1, which is that XY, and then just a 1, because in this instance the block that I've saved is set to scale uniformly. So I don't need an X scale and a Y scale, I just need a scale value of 1. Now if the block I was inserting hadn't been set to insert uniformly or to scale uniformly, I would need to specify an X and a Y scale. So in that instance I would need another 1 in there. But here I don't need that. The 0 is the rotation angle, and pre-count is this number up here. So pre-count, which is our count 1, which is the string with the prefix and the suffix. Okay, what it then does, this line here underneath says ignore any subsequent attributes on that particular block that you're inserting. So it's not again going to expect other attributes. And then it just runs through again, obviously down here when it finishes. That then resets the attribute dialog box. Okay, so we've got that as the code. And if you want a copy of this code, do just shout and ask me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Just put a comment down below and I will send it to you, but I do need to have an email address to send it to. I've had a few people who just say, yes, please send it to me, my name's Bill. That's not very helpful. Okay, now back in AutoCAD, I've created a little drawing here and I want to insert my blocks on the right hand side over here. First thing I need to do is I need to load that Lisp routine. So I'm going to say load application. I'm going to find my ink block insertion and I'm going to say load. Now the important thing is this must say successfully loaded down here. If it doesn't, it hasn't loaded properly. Now that that's loaded, what I can do is I can type in ink and it now comes up and recognizes the command ink block. It's now asking me which block do I wish to insert. Now the block that I've got is on my desktop and it's called table row. Open. That has now stored that block in memory as a variable. And it's now asking me for some more details before it starts. Now the starting number is that one plus an increment of 0.1. So 2.1, press enter. My increment is 0.1, so each time I want it to be from 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and so on. Enter. As I said, my prefix and my suffix I'm not using. Text height in this instance we're going to use 30 because that matches the particular size of the rows that I'm putting in. And now it's asking me for that pick point. So this is the point 1 or PNT1 as it's going to be. Now when I click it simply puts in the block based upon where the base point of that block is. Now I've chosen the top left hand corner of the block so that when I insert subsequent blocks I've got something to snap onto. And as you can see, what it's doing is it's putting in block after block and each one of these is incrementally numbered. Press escape to come out of the routine. Now if I want to go and edit the attributes for this block, I simply double click on it and I can in here put in the other attributes for that block. Okay, I hope that's been useful. Once more, thank you for listening.